The grand hall was filled with nobility. Every titled family was present. The air smelled of roses and pride. Lady Eleanor stood before the altar. Her gown was a masterpiece of silk. She was marrying Lord Alistair today. It was a union of two great houses. Her heart, however, was a stone. She looked at her intended husband. His smile was cold and triumphant. He did not look at her eyes. He looked at the estate she brought. The ceremony proceeded with solemn words. Vows were exchanged under the high arches. The bishop pronounced them man and wife. A feast followed in the great hall. Laughter and music filled the stone room. Eleanor moved through the crowd like a ghost. She felt 100 eyes upon her. Then her new husband approached her. He leaned close, his voice a whisper. Only she could hear his cruel words. He spoke them with absolute certainty. "You were born to serve," he said. The room fell completely silent around them. Every guest heard his declaration. Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. She could not breathe. She could not speak. Lord Alistair simply smiled. He turned to accept more congratulations. The humiliation was total. It was public, and it was only the beginning. Eleanor's new life was a beautiful prison. Hawthorne Manor was vast and cold. Her chambers were opulent and lonely. Lord Alistair was rarely present. He preferred his London townhouse. He visited only to issue commands. Eleanor's duties were clearly defined. She was to manage the household accounts. She was to host his political dinners. She was to be a silent ornament. Her opinions were never requested. Her presence was merely tolerated. The servants watched her with pity. They saw her quiet dignity. They heard his cutting remarks. One evening, he reviewed her ledger. He found a single shilling misplaced. He summoned her to his study. His voice was like winter frost. "This error is unacceptable," he stated. "A countess must be flawless in service." Eleanor merely nodded, her eyes downcast. "You understand your purpose here," he continued. "Your lineage is respectable, but thin. You provide legitimacy and management. Nothing more." He closed the ledger with finality. Eleanor returned to her rooms. She looked out at the dark gardens. She thought of her childhood home. It was modest, but filled with love. That life felt a century ago. Here, she was a ghost in silk, a servant with a coronet. Her heart ached for something real, but she buried the feeling deep. Survival required complete submission. For now. Lord Alistair decided to host a summer ball. It was to showcase his wealth and power. Every influential family in the county attended. Eleanor worked for weeks on the preparations. She oversaw every detail without complaint. The night arrived with lanterns and music. Guests marveled at the manor's splendor. Eleanor wore a gown of deep blue. She greeted each guest with grace. For a moment, she almost felt like a countess. Then Lord Alistair called for silence. He stood at the head of the hall. All eyes turned to him. He raised his glass for a toast. He spoke of legacy and tradition. Then his gaze fell upon Eleanor. His smile did not reach his eyes. "Observe my wife, everyone," he announced. His voice carried across the silent room. "She exemplifies the duty of nobility, born not for pleasure, but for service." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor felt her cheeks burn with shame. He continued, addressing her directly, "Out now. Your existence is a testament to duty. Never forget that." The applause that followed was polite, but the humiliation was absolute. That night, Eleanor did not sleep. She stared at the canopy above her bed. Her hand went to a small wooden box. It was hidden beneath her floorboard. She did not open it, not yet, but her fingers traced its lid. Inside lay a truth she had forgotten. a truth from another life entirely. A letter arrived from London. It was addressed to Lord Alistair. The seal was from a prestigious law firm. Alistair opened it in his study. His usual arrogance faltered for a second. His brow furrowed as he read. Eleanor happened to be passing the doorway. She saw his expression change. He crumpled the paper in his fist. "Impossible," he muttered to the empty room. He did not notice Eleanor watching. He immediately sent for his carriage. He departed for the city within the hour. His departure was abrupt and unexplained. The household felt a strange shift. A tension had lifted from the halls. The head butler, Mr. Higgins, spoke to Eleanor. His tone was unusually gentle. "The post also brought this, my lady." He offered her a different letter. It was addressed in a familiar, elegant hand. Eleanor's heart quickened. She took the letter to her chamber. She broke the seal with trembling fingers. It was from her childhood governess. The message was short, but significant. "Your mother's friend remembers everything," it read. "The documents are safe. Have courage." Eleanor read the words 3 times. She carefully burned the letter in the fireplace. The flames consumed the evidence, but not the hope. Lord Alistair returned 3 days later. He was more irritable than ever. He snapped at servants and slammed doors. Something had shaken his foundation. He did not know what Eleanor now held, not in her hands, but in her heart. Lord Alistair's financial troubles became apparent. He hosted a dinner for his creditors. He needed to project absolute confidence. Eleanor was commanded to attend. She was to be the picture of serenity. The dinner was a tense and quiet affair. The men at the table were stern. They asked difficult questions about his investments. Alistair answered with forced charm. He blamed market fluctuations and poor harvests. Then one creditor, Mr. Thorne, spoke directly. "And your wife's holdings, my lord?" he asked. "Are they not tied to the estate?" Alistair laughed, a cold and dismissive sound. He turned his gaze toward Eleanor. She sat perfectly still. "My wife has no holdings of consequence," he declared. "She came to this marriage with nothing. A respectable name, but empty coffers." He took a sip of wine. He addressed the entire table now. "Let us be perfectly clear, gentlemen. Everything here is mine. Every stone, every acre, every painting." He looked back at Eleanor. His eyes held pure contempt. She was born to serve this estate, not to own it. The guests fell into an uncomfortable silence. Eleanor did not flinch. She did not look away. She simply met his gaze. That seemed to anger him most. The dinner ended soon after. Eleanor retired to her room. She opened the hidden wooden box at last. Inside were not trinkets or letters. It was a single, sealed parchment envelope. The wax seal was unbroken. It bore the crest of a royal court. She knew what she had to do. Tomorrow, she would send for a solicitor. Her period of silent service was over. Eleanor sent a discreet message to town. She requested the services of Solicitor Graham. He was known for his integrity and discretion. He arrived at Hawthorne Manor the next afternoon. Lord Alistair was away on business. Eleanor received him in the morning room. She placed the wooden box on the table, where she opened it and revealed the envelope. Solicitor Graham examined the heavy parchment. His eyes widened at the royal crest. The seal was decades old, but intact. "May I inquire as to its contents, my lady?" he asked gently. Eleanor took a steadying breath. "It is my mother's final testament," she said. "She gave it to me as a child. She told me to hide it, to never break the seal unless desperate." The solicitor nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "And the nature of this testament?" Eleanor's voice was a whisper. "It pertains to my true parentage." The words hung in the quiet room. Solicitor Graham handled the envelope with reverence. "This seal is from the High Court. This is not a simple will. This is a legal decree of recognition." Eleanor felt a tear trace her cheek. She had carried this secret since girlhood. Her mother's dying wish was protection. Protection from those who would use her, or those who would discard her. The solicitor looked at her with new respect. "We must petition the court to open this. The procedure is formal and public." Eleanor nodded. She was not afraid of public scrutiny, not anymore. Lord Alistair would receive a summons soon. He would have no idea what was coming. The court summons arrived 1 week later. It was delivered to Lord Alistair's London club. He read it with growing confusion and rage. He was commanded to appear before a judge. The matter concerned the estate of Hawthorne Manor and the legitimacy of his marriage union. He immediately returned to the country in a fury. He stormed into Eleanor's sitting room. She was calmly reading a book. He threw the summons onto her lap. "What is the meaning of this farce?" he demanded. His voice shook with anger. Eleanor looked up at him calmly. She did not reach for the document. "It is a legal proceeding, my lord," she said. "As the summons clearly states." He leaned over her, his face dark. "You have nothing. You are nothing," he hissed. "This will only humiliate you further." Eleanor closed her book with a soft snap. She stood to face him. For the first time, she did not lower her eyes. "We shall see what the judge says," she replied. Her tone was quiet, but firm. Alistair laughed, a harsh and brittle sound. "A judge? You think a judge will help you? The law protects men of property, men of title, not penniless women with fantasies." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "I will enjoy watching your final disgrace." He slammed the door behind him. Eleanor picked up the summons. She smoothed the crumpled parchment. The hearing was set for 1 month's time. The same guests from the summer ball were summoned. They were all called as witnesses. The stage was set for a public reckoning. Alistair believed he held all the power. He was wrong. The High Court chamber was filled to capacity. Every noble from the county was present. They whispered behind gloved hands. Lord Alistair stood proudly before the bench. He wore his finest coat and a smirk. Eleanor entered quietly, dressed in simple gray. She took a seat beside Solicitor Graham. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The proceedings began with dry formalities. Then the judge addressed the central matter. "We are here for a decree of recognition," he stated. "A sealed testament is presented as evidence." Solicitor Graham approached the bench. He carried the ancient parchment envelope. The royal crest was visible to all. Lord Alistair's smirk faded slightly. "What trickery is this?" he muttered. The judge took the envelope. He examined the unbroken seal carefully. He then produced a silver letter opener. The sound of slicing wax echoed in the room. He withdrew a single sheet of parchment. He read it silently first. His expression changed from neutrality to surprise. He looked from the document to Eleanor. Then he looked at Lord Alistair. The silence in the courtroom became absolute. The judge cleared his throat. He prepared to read the contents aloud. Every witness leaned forward. Lord Alistair stood frozen, his confidence crumbling. He did not know his world was ending, but he was about to find out. The judge's voice was clear and resonant. He read the words from the parchment. "By decree of His Majesty's High Court," he began, "we recognize the lineage of Eleanor of Hawthorne." The room held its collective breath. The child known as Eleanor is hereby recognized. She is the legitimate daughter of the late Earl of Marlow. Her mother was the Earl's lawful wife in secret. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Lord Alistair took a step backward, or his face went pale as bone. The judge continued, his words falling like stones. The title and entailed estates of the Earl of Marlow. They pass directly to his sole heir, Eleanor. This includes the lands bordering Hawthorne Manor. The truth was now undeniable and public. Eleanor was not a woman of thin lineage. She was a countess in her own right. She held a title equal to Alistair's own, and she possessed vast, independent wealth. The judge looked at Lord Alistair. "Your marriage, sir, was a union of equals. Legally, you hold no claim over her property. Her holdings were never yours to control." Alistair opened his mouth to speak. No sound came out. He looked at the faces in the crowd. They were the same people from his ball. They had heard him declare her a servant. Now they watched his utter humiliation. He had built his pride on a lie, and the lie had just shattered before everyone. The judge issued his final ruling from the bench. Lady Eleanor, Countess of Marlow, retains all her property. Lord Alistair's debts are his own to settle. The marriage may be dissolved at her petition. The gavel struck the sound block once. The matter was settled by law. Chaos erupted in the courtroom. Gentlemen murmured in shock. Ladies looked at Eleanor with new awe. Lord Alistair finally found his voice. It was a strangled, desperate sound. "This is an outrage, a conspiracy," he shouted. The judge fixed him with a stern gaze. "You will respect this court, my lord. The document is authentic. The decree is decades old. Your ignorance does not nullify the law." Alistair turned toward Eleanor. His eyes were wide with panic and fury. All his arrogance had evaporated. Only raw fear remained. He had mocked her as a servant, and he had called her nothing. Now she held everything he needed. His creditors turned their eyes upon him. They saw a man ruined. They saw a man who had insulted his salvation. Eleanor stood from her chair. She did not look at Alistair. She addressed the judge with perfect composure. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said quietly. Then she turned and walked up the aisle. The crowd parted for her in silence. She did not glance back at her husband. She walked out of the courtroom into the light. Lord Alistair remained behind, surrounded by whispers. His title was intact, but his power was gone. His wealth was an illusion. His reputation was dust. The servant he despised was now his superior, and everyone in the county knew it. 1 year later, Hawthorne Manor stood quiet. Lord Alistair had been forced to sell it. His debts had consumed his entire fortune. He lived now in a modest London lodging. He was a figure of pity and gossip. The great doors of Marlow Hall opened instead. Eleanor, Countess of Marlow, stood on its steps. She had restored her father's ancestral home. The house was filled with light and warmth. She hosted the same county families for tea. The atmosphere was one of genuine respect. No one spoke of Lord Alistair anymore. His name was a cautionary tale. Eleanor used her wealth and title for good. She founded a school for village children. She provided pensions for retired servants. Her life was one of purpose and grace. She never remarried. She found peace in her own sovereignty. The wooden box now sat on her desk. The opened envelope was inside it. It was a reminder of a promise kept. A mother's love had protected her daughter. That love had waited decades for justice. On a quiet afternoon, Mr. Higgins visited. He was her head butler now. He served her with fierce loyalty. "You were never born to serve, my lady," he said. Eleanor smiled, looking out at the gardens. "No, Higgins," she replied softly. "I was born to reclaim." The story traveled through every drawing room in England. Arrogance had been shattered by hidden truth. Cruelty had been answered by quiet dignity. And a sealed will had changed everything. True legacy is not found in a title. It is found in the strength to endure and the courage to finally come home. Have you ever witnessed a hidden truth change everything? Tell me your story in the comments below, and tell me where in the world you are watching from today. If justice was served in this story, subscribe to Divine Justice Stories and leave your like below. Every story here is proof that arrogance never wins in the end. New stories every single week.